Hey, what's going on guys? I'm Mrs. here. Today we are back for another deck profile. This is a deck that I actually have had for a long period of time that I was going to review, then it got banned, so now I'm here to work on it again. It's actually a deck that I've owned since I'm not sure about the past year or so. It's actually Aggravain. Now, Night Fury Aggravain is a VR from 2020, so he's not that old. He's definitely under the radar because for Gold Paladin, you basically only know this guy as well as Gurguit and Ezel, and that's it. So the thing is that in terms of actually playing Gold Paladin, most of the time you would only see stuff like either Spectral Duke or Gurguit. If you're part of VMC, then you definitely know Gurguit by now. He's been destroying everything. But let's say you're not quite keen on actually just winning at a very boring rate. Let's say you want to spice things up, try something new. Then this is definitely the deck for you. So it's a very short deck profile because most of these cards are quite well established in the Gold Paladin clan. I will be going through their skills and what they do, so for those of you who don't play Gold Paladin, you still would have some form of informative knowledge. And hey, if you feel like picking this up, I say go for it because it's definitely really fun. It's one of the most fun Gold Paladin decks I've had left in a while, so yeah, enjoy. Our grade 3s is 4 copies of Night of Fury Aggravain and 1 copy of Bluish Flame Liberator Percival. So I think this is quite straightforward. I'll go through Aggravain first since the one that he needs more explanation. So Aggravain has 2 skills. When he attacks, column +1 and move all your regards to the soul. You look at the top number of cards equal to the number of cards you called this turn, and then you superior call any number, you shuffle the rest into your deck. So basically he refreshes your whole board, but how much he refreshes it by is dependent on how much you've committed this turn. So usually when doing Aggravain turns, try not to actually pour your board too early, then you will have less things to actually enable. It's kind of interesting because Aggravain rewards you for overcommitting. The more you pour on a board, the more he actually turns that into the multi-attacking point later on when Aggravain attacks. The only downside is firstly Aggravain doesn't give any numbers at all, so everything's coming down as vanilla. Secondly, Aggravain himself will only be a vanilla at 12k. There is no actual way to pass Aggravain power or even to boost Aggravain since he takes all your regards to soul. So do keep that in mind when playing it, that there is a bit of a number issue, which is why the rest of the deck, you build it mostly to try and solve it. The second skill is the big skill. You soul blast 12 cards. Your opponent cannot call triggers for the rest of the game. So basically just ban triggers outright. It's something that you try and get to as soon as possible, but it's not something you need to see every game. This list is actually pretty good with the future and modern support. You actually see this skill about once every 2 to 3 games, assuming you're not killed very easily. So that's why this list, we try and build it so that you don't get killed off by the early rush meta contenders, but at the same time you can play a relatively good drag game because this skill can be used quite often in by turn 4 to 5. Which turn 5 is quite rare, but turn 4, most people still get to see their turn 4s. So that's where you do actually have a pretty good chance of activating this skill. Mostly though, you do aim to capitalize the first skill, to not just get your soul, but to use that to really spring off the rest of your deck and to continue the rest of your multi-attacks. And of course our 1 copy of Bluish Flame Liberator Percival. I think we all know what he does. If he's on the Vanguard Circle, all your XL Circle units gain plus 5k. When placed on VOR, if your Vanguard is greater or greater, come +1, discard a card from your hand. You gain Imaginative XL, and then you search your deck for this guy. You search your deck for Aggravain, and then you shuffle. You can, if you don't have one in the deck, you can spirit card from the draw. So that's a pretty nice thing. Of course, this card is really broken in the right deck, but of course in weaker decks like Aggravain, you kind of want this guy out as soon as possible as well. But it's not like Gurguit where we just play fishing and then we win the game. You actually need to work hard for it. So yeah, it is pretty fun. Definitely try and get this guy out as soon as possible, but if not, it's really okay. Moving on to the grade 2s, we play 4 copies of Oath Liberator Aggravain. We play 4 copies of Liberator of Royalty Fallon. Then we play 4 copies of Liberator of the Flute Escra. Wow, that's a lot of Liberators. I'm loving it. And of course, 4 copies of Kaiden. So it is a pretty interesting list considering this is a non-liberated deck. You have so many liberated great choose. Wonderful, wonderful. I'm very supportive of it. So let's just dive right into it. First of all, I'll discuss Aggravain. Aggravain, when placed on a Vanguard circle, you count +1, you look at the top 3 cards of your deck, Spiral Call 1, and then you put the rest back to the bottom of your deck. Okay, it's basically just OG Aggravain skill redone, but it's only on the Vanguard circle. That's fine. You don't really use this as your right target unless you really need to, but I think it's fine. The second skill is when he attacks, you move one of your regards and soul. This unit gains 10,000 power, and at the bell, you bounce it back to the hand. So I know this kind of contradicts with Aggravain because you want to move as many rearguards as possible into your soul, but you actually want to keep Aggravain to keep bouncing back into the hand so that you actually can use him multiple times. He is the largest attacker in this deck at 19,000 power, so he is certainly someone you do actually want to keep around. It is pretty good, so yeah, you don't really need to worry about not moving Aggravain onto the soul because you can even use Aggravain as your secondary round of attackers with Aggravain, allowing your fresh batch of units to still have some people moving into the soul. So you still benefit in any way in doubt. I got original print. I love the flags. Moving on to another grade 2, we'll talk about one that has a much more greater memory in my heart. Found. For those of you who have seen my Prominence contact profile, you remember him. If you have called the unit from your deck this turn, this unit gains 5,000 power continuously. So he's a 14k attacker as a rearguard circle. That's pretty good. Helps with numbers. It's absolutely free, by the way. Second skill is when his attack hits on V or R, you look at the top card of your deck, you may choose to superior call it to a rearguard circle. So you can actually choose to leave it on top, and then you basically just play Oracle Ting Tang. So it's a really cool one to hit, Fallon. It's so great to see you again, and it's nice to see that even as a generic, he can be used in other decks like Aggravain. I mean, just such a nice card altogether. He's definitely not the best Gold Paladin card. He's definitely not anything broken. Most Gold Paladin players do not like this card, but I just think he's great. And of course, we have Liberator of the Fleet as Scrat. The first Liberator to enter the V series, he became a traitor, and now we are back at his doorstep. When placed on Vanguard or Vanguard Circle, if your Vanguard is Aggravain or a Scrat, you look at the top card of your deck and superior call it. You can then choose to play one Counter Blast to let Scrat gain additional 5,000 power. You don't actually use the Counter Blast skill often, if not ever, because you barely need the power, but there are times you do, so you won't be laughing as much as I do. But the fact that Scrat is literally just an instant unite on place, as long as Aggravain is your Vanguard, it helps a lot because you need to call as many cards as possible. Scrat literally just solves that and soothes Aggravain's anger with a very nice flute sound. Our last grade 2 is Kaiden. Sorry about that. Kaiden, when placed on a Virga circle, count +1, discard 1, look at the top 3 cards of your deck, choose one from among them, superior call, put them back into the deck, and shuffle. Then, if you have Hoel on your Virga circle, you can actually draw a card. So, this is Hoel. So, as long as you have this guy on your field somewhere, you actually get to draw back, which means you got a free +1. Whereas, if you do without, then Kaiden is just a net 0. So do keep that in mind. It's a really nice board builder, and Hoel really does have a really good skill in the deck, so I do recommend using it. But if not, all in all, it is pretty neat to use them together. Upgrade 1s, we play 4 copies of Hoel, we play 4 copies of Gurguit, and we play 4 copies of Interlude Angel. So it's a really, really simple list, as you can probably guess, because it kind of built itself in terms of the early aggression. So let's break it down. For Gurguit is our generic grade 3 searcher. His unite conditions if you are if you call a card, if you call 2 or more cards from the deck. Okay, that's fine. And of course, when placed on V or R from hand, you look at the top 5, you can add a grade 3. Okay, cool. Then of course with Interlude Angel, we play Interlude Angel the 4th because I just really need this skill off as soon as possible. Interlude Angel is when placed from a card's ability, move on the soul and spirit call the top card of your deck. So this is something we use to help move along the soul and just generate more calls as much as possible. Although if you do get her in hand, she is a bit of a dead weight, so just throw her away. And last off is 4 copies of Hoel. Hoel is during your turn, the unit that was placed in this unit's column gains 5,000 power. If you have Kaiden anywhere on your board, the unit gets 10k instead of 5. Alright, that is pretty good of a skill. It's literally a free +5 or +10. It's free numbers as long as the card is called this turn. But that's so simple with Aggravain. So really, it's just such a good card to have around. It does nothing in terms of plussing, but it's just so good in the numbers department. It's just great to carry him around. Our grade zeros, we play 8 crits, 4 draw, 4 heal guards, and my starter is Spring Breeze Messenger. So I mean, it's really easy to really see how we're doing this, because 8 crits is just for the aggression. We don't really need fronts because my deck does generate relatively good numbers. You want to push for game. Heal guards because you actually do need some protection in the early game. So, and it's also good to call Mark because it is a 10k body, so it does help someone or another. 4 Hero Shield Mark is just what a great OG face to see. Spring Breeze Messenger is just a fun starter, but you can play whichever starter you wish. And that actually wraps it up for my Aggravain deck profile. It's a really short and sweet deck because the deck is really simple. Although it's very intricate in its place, I would say the deck is just so smooth. I was really not expecting to have such a good time with this deck in terms of testing. You know, I do want to see what the next VCall 5 and 6 bring for the deck. I want to see what VMC, whether they're gonna do something with Gold Paladin in terms of the banners again. But regardless of how it swings, I'm kind of glad to be able to find a Gold Paladin that I enjoy without feeling, like a real bad person. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.